Full time, Burnley nil, Chelsea 4. And at half time, Janusz, I'm not sure many people would have predicted that scoreline with no goals in the opening 45.
Yeah, I suppose not. But, if you look at Burnley, I mean, they're fighting for their lives as well. I think at their own place, as we know, they can make it difficult for anyone there. So maybe not shocked. You always expect more from a team like Chelsea. They were slow, they were lethargic. As we all know, they prefer to play a high tempo game against teams that like to play a little bit. We saw one of the best games in a cup final just the other day against Liverpool, right? I mean, that's the quality that Chelsea possesses. And in order to get that out, sometimes you need a team that plays against you. Not that Burnley didn't, but I think the tempo for Chelsea was awful. But what a difference a halftime makes, I suppose, right? And then after that, Reece James, for me, single-handedly, it turned the switch on for Chelsea. Maybe Thomas Tuchel had something to do with that at halftime as well.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you just said what a difference halftime makes. What difference Reece James makes to the balance of that Chelsea lineup?
Well, I think when you look at Chelsea in general, you talk about how important the wide game is, and when you looked at that lineup and you looked at who's playing and who's missing, that told you a lot, right? I mean, Marcos Alonso, who's been wonderful actually against Liverpool, he tested positive for COVID. No Hudson-Odoi there as well. Saul's certainly not a wing back. I think you and I can attest to that, having watched him not just here in the Premier League but in La Liga as well. So I think when you look at that balance of that team, it wasn't there. And let's not forget that Reece James is just coming back. I mean, he's still probably not at his best, certainly not 100%, but he did make a difference with the first goal. Then, of course, the setup for one of the Kai Havertz's goal as well. So I think it has to do with a little bit of that balance, and maybe the right players not playing in the right positions. But if there was one, that was Reece James, because on that right hand side, I thought he was very good.
A 10-minute spell at the start of the second half from 0-0 to 3-0, and Burnley offered zero resistance. Is it difficult to know which side to fall down here on? Is it the Chelsea were really good or Burnley were really poor at the start of that second half, or was it a bit of both?
Well, it's always a bit of both, but I think we know Burnley. We know how a team like that operates, and Sean Dyche needs to keep it 0-0 for as long as possible and look at their chances. They had a chance with McNeil, if you remember. It was a rare mistake from Mendy, where Burnley may be going ahead. Who knows? It changes the momentum. If you look at Chelsea, they have got a lot to deal with, right? Psychologically and physically. That game has taken a lot. The game against Liverpool in the cup final takes a lot. Not only, obviously, you go to extra time and it was just an up and down game, but you lose that game. Everything that goes around with the ownership of Chelsea Football Club, it weighs on players. I know that there's probably one or two or three that, think about that. So, but in the second half, when you have that sort of quality and you score in succession like this, Mark, right? For Burnley, there's just no coming back because there's just not enough there. So it was a perfect start for Chelsea. And not only Burnley, I think better teams wouldn't have been able to withstand that when you concede, what did you say, 3-10 or just about that?
Can Chelsea prioritise the Champions League, knowing if they do, they should still have enough to finish third in the Premier League?
Sure they can. Obviously, I mean, I was just going to say that when it was 0-0, I looked at that and I said to myself, Chelsea better watch out because they're in danger maybe of falling out of the top four. However realistic or unrealistic you thought, if you look at points and you look at the push from West Ham, from Arsenal in particular, with their games in hand and all that, I said to myself, my goodness, but having won that, that's not going to happen now. I don't believe. Honestly, I didn't believe it even before, but I think they're going to be there, and that's an amazingly important trophy right now, right? That's what's left for them. They are the defending champions. They will never admit to it. But I think if you look at the players that are injured, that's how you prioritize. Sometimes maybe you don't risk them in league games. You want to make sure when the time comes, when they're needed for the Champions League, they're available to you. That's the way managers these days sometimes prioritize with certain players.
Let's end this, Janusz, talking about Burnley. We saw a team spirit and an effervescence against Spurs. And there was a lot of that on show in the first half against Chelsea, but once the first goal went in, the floodgates opened. Survival chances for Sean Dyche's men, what do you think?
Yeah, it's becoming more and more difficult. The good news is that Norwich have lost. We don't know what Watford may do against Arsenal. They may lose, but I think Brentford, that was a big win against Norwich away. So that's the big story for Burnley. And let's not forget the big story for Chelsea is Romelu Lukaku, not even on the pitch today. No matter how you slice it, this is Kai Havertz that's scoring important goals. Today he scored a couple of more, and there's more to that story, that's for sure. You don't pay over 100 million for a player to not play in big, or not play or not start in big important games. And this is a league game. This is normally a place where you'd imagine that Lukaku would be playing. He isn't, so there's definitely a story behind it, if people like it or not, and we'll see where it ends.
Yep, bottom line is right now, you ain't getting rid of Kai Havertz to accommodate Romelu Lukaku with the form that the German is in. Chelsea win this one by 4-0 thanks to a dominant start to the second half.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.